Welcome, Mike, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about, obviously, Nocturnus AD, this new album, Universal, and more things related to the metal world in general. So first we start by asking, how has the band been during the last 5 years? Because your Paradox album was released in 2019, and we have this new album.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Javier. And it's been weird the last few years because of COVID. When we put the album out, COVID hit like right after that, and we had some really good festivals planned, and things were going very well. And then everything with COVID, just everything went to a halt, and that lasted like 2 years. So it kind of put everything back. Luckily, we did kind of have more time in that sense to write more of the album like slower and work on it a little bit longer than normal. But that's pretty much what we've been doing since then, is just writing and practicing the songs.
Oh, okay. Okay, when I listen to this Universal and Paradox, especially from 2019, it feels like you want to continue the legacy of the key of the 1990, a primordial album with progressive and technical aspects into the metal. So therefore, why did you decide to continue with the last sound and not start with the sound that you left off on Thresholds?
Well, Thresholds really didn't have anything to do with the key at all.
Yeah.
So that's why when I decided to do Nocturnus AD, I wanted to go back to the key where the key left off. And it just happened. I mean, this wasn't really planned, but the last four songs of the key made a story. And after we had Andromeda Strain and Droids written, I said these two could fit together and make a little story. So when we went into writing Destroying the Manger and Empire of the Sands, we kind of made sure that they kind of worked with the whole storyline. So it ended up being on the key. The last four songs were really the story of the key. All the other songs were just kind of like songs, that were on the album. So being that's what happened, it was like the last four songs in the album ended that way. I figured, like, when we did Paradox, that I would do the same thing, kind of set up the album exactly the same. So the last four songs were, besides from the outro, the little outro thing that we did, but the last four actual songs were the key story continued. And then before that, like the first song, well, on the key, it's Lake of Fire and Standing in Blood. They kind of make a little story too. So on Paradox, we made Seizing the Throne, which is like the third song in that aspect. And then I also wanted to continue Neolithic, so we did Paleolithic, and that was the third song on the record. So that was the third song on Paradox as well. So, I tried to make some more than just one thing continue from the key, because nothing on Thresholds goes back to the key. Nothing. None of the songs go back to that at all. And that's not what I wanted to do, but that's just the way it ended up, with four other people being in the band and me. So because it didn't really happen the way I wanted it to happen, I figured I could go back and, even though it was a long time later, I had the right people that I was playing with, and we were playing a lot of Nocturnus songs anyway, and people were telling us that we sound, like Nocturnus did back in the day. So I figured, well, why don't we just try to continue the key story at least? And it kind of turned into a whole thing of Nocturnus AD, and then we got signed, and we did a little demo here where we practice at my house. And after that demo really took off, we only put out like one of the songs. We recorded like 6 songs, but we only put out one just at first. And we got a bunch of offers, and Profound Lore was really, gave us like a really good offer. And, everything that I wanted to do, like the video and stuff like that, they were behind all of it and said they would do, everything would be good. So as far as that goes, we signed with them and did Paradox. So when I set up the album, I wanted to have it kind of like the key was, and have everything continue exactly like that. So with the Universal, we kind of did the same thing. The song Mesolithic is the third song on the record. And the last four songs, again, kind of continue. Well, they do continue the story of Dr. Magus.
Okay, interesting details about those universal. Great to know. So, and with this return to the sound of the key, so why didn't you decide to continue working with Dancia Grave on the continuation of the covers of Universal and Paradox?
Wait, what was that? Why didn't I?
Why didn't you decide to continue working with Dancia Grave as a cover artist?
Oh, Dan. Well, Dan didn't do. He didn't do Thresholds.
No, no, no. I'm talking about the key.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I didn't really ever get a chance to really talk to Dan that much about it. I had the cover was actually done. The original cover was actually done by a friend of mine here in Tampa. He was an artist, and he used to paint the sides of vans. You know how back in the 80s, people would get those custom paint jobs on the sides of their vans and on like Harley tanks. He used to do a lot of stuff like that. So I gave him the idea of the guy in the chair. He didn't have a name back then, but it was like an evil guy in the chair, and the band was all hooked up to the all the instruments in the cave and all that. So I gave him the idea, and he would not let me see the painting till it was done. This guy, his name was Anthony in Tampa, and when we had like a party, and Dig happened to be from Earache, the owner of Earache. He happened to be in town because Morbid Angel was recording a record at the time, and so he was here, and we had a little like party at my house, and the guy unveiled the painting, and Dig and all of us, we just were like, oh, this isn't exactly anything near what we wanted. And it looked like how a 1970s comic book cover is really simple drawn.
Okay.
Like say Iron Man or Fantastic Four, a cover like that.
Okay.
In the 1970s, the covers were cool and everything, but they don't have any kind of detail to them really. They're just a 70s comic book cover kind of thing. And it looked like that. There was not a lot of detail in the painting. It looked very comic book-ish, which it wasn't a bad thing, but it definitely wasn't what I wanted. And Dig hated it. So he was like, I know this artist that we're starting to work with named Dan Seagrave. I'll give him this painting, a picture of this painting, and I'll let him redo this picture in his style. And if you like it, then we'll use it. And I said, okay, So they had Dan Seagrave redo the cover. And so I never really got a chance to talk to him, but he had the original cover that my friend had done and used that as the template to do that cover. So I kind of like to have a different artist do the different covers. Like Paradox was done by somebody different than Universal. So
yes.
I want to have the Dr. Magus on every cover doing something, that goes along with the album, the story of the key that's continued. But I kind of like to have different people do it, so you get a little different perspective of the same, Dr. Magus, but in different settings done by different artists.
No, okay. Oh, a great detail that you mentioned about your friend Anthony's did the first cover art for the key, and then has a different. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that really. Okay.
Yeah, I still have the original painting in my house. It's really big. It's a huge painting, and it looks cool, but it definitely isn't anything like what Dan Seagrave did. And when we saw Dan's work, it was just like, oh my God, this looks awesome. So I kind of wanted to keep that kind of theme going that he has, but have different artists do their versions of the key cover. Not the key cover, but a continuation of it.
Okay. Now, a detail that is a trend and annoyance today is talk about the AI, and that it should not be used for the art. But curiously, the ones who stay the most angry are the fans, because bands like you in your video Cephalocode, the artist created by Wizard Head we did use AI to do this kind of aspect using the technology. That's normally. And the other bands like DSI, Pestilence, Catatonia, My Dying Bride, etc., and the list going on, well-known band names in metal used without any trouble or any problem. So, what's your point of view when using this technology, the AI, and why do you think the fan is the only one affected by this idea of using AI on covers or video edits?
Well, I first saw people starting to get mad about it because, and I understand the one part of using AI for an album cover because it can take the job away from an artist. And I
Mhm.
think that's what a lot of people are mad about is that AI takes the place of an artist. So you type in a prompt. I played around with AI a lot myself. You know, it's fun to mess around with. I don't think I would really ever have my album by just AI. We had a real person paint art. And that's where, to me, that's where it really started was the album cover being done in AI. A lot of people are mad because a band will just type in a prompt and get an album cover and there it's done. And because AI, when it first came out, it was basically stealing images from other artists that were online. It was using stuff online to make the photos, make the album covers.
Yeah.
So, and I completely understand that. If when AI is actually stealing somebody else's artwork and using it, and they're not getting credited or anything, well, that's not a good thing. But the way we used AI was that, I mean, Pestilence got it bad, and that
Yeah.
happened before our video came out, and it happened like 2 weeks before our video came out, and I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible, and I'm like, shoot, you know, what am I gonna, what am I supposed to do here? We already did the video and everything, it just hadn't come out yet, so
Yeah.
I was like, what am I supposed to do? And but the thing was the way we used it, Wizard Head had already done stuff for Mastodon.
Yes.
Not Mastodon, I mean Meshuggah. Sorry.
Hmm.
He already did some AI videos for Meshuggah and people weren't really saying anything bad about it.
Yeah.
They liked it. So I was like, the way he uses it, he doesn't he does all the work still. Like the video was completely done like any other video. We had a person film us. We had him edit the whole video together, and then he just ran it through AI like more like a filter instead of typing in a prompt and letting the AI doesn't do full band videos.
Mhm.
So, it does mostly just single images or very small clips of animation. But if you put your own stuff into it, all it is a filter, kind of like Photoshop or After Effects, if you're familiar with that is. Um, Photoshop and After Effects are both from the Adobe company, and everybody uses Photoshop. I mean, album covers have been used Photoshop for 15, 20 years now, and nobody has ever said anything about that. Instagram, it puts little things on people's faces, things like that. It's been used. These are filters. They're not taking a job away from anybody. So when we did our video, we had, somebody film us, and then we had a guy edit the whole thing so it would look like just any other band video of us playing. And then he just ran it through the AI and had weird effects put on us. So it didn't take a job away from anybody. It actually, we actually gave two people jobs to make this video, which is the same we did with the Paradox video. AI wasn't a thing when we did Paradox, of course, but that was CGI. And CGI is
Yeah.
really not much different than AI when you really
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
I mean, and how many people love CGI movies?
Oof.
Every movie, you go see a Marvel movie,
Yeah.
every Marvel movie, they're shot in front of green screens and the whole background is computer generated. That's what CGI means, computer generated images. It's just that I think that the AI, like I said in the beginning, the AI was stealing people's artwork and generating the images from other people's artwork. So if you put your own images into AI, it uses your images and not anybody else's. So that makes a big, big difference to me. It's more like a tool if you use it that way. But if you just type in a prompt and let it steal artwork from the internet, then that's a different story.
Well, yeah, that is true. Well, since the beginning, since I hear Nocturnus and this one, this Nocturnus 80, especially, hearing all songs from the Paradox and now all songs from this Universal, for me, it's very difficult to pick one song, two songs for an album, because you need to see a whole perspective of the music. Since the beginning, you are a creator of the progressive, technical, and more things into the death metal. So, but now we're not living in a world that prefers to hear, hey, I prefer just two songs from this album and include to my playlist, according to the new generation especially. And for you, if we try to relate this aspect of this new generation hearing new music just for songs, and perhaps apart away from the Cell of a God and the Yes of the Dark Side of the Moon, the first two singles, which other song for you or songs capture whole essence that this universal has?
You know, it's funny you said because I kind of somebody's asked me that before, and I said I'm not really sure what song would be like my favorite song on that album, on Universal because I like a bunch of different stuff in all the songs, so it would be really hard. And I think the songs are really different. Every song on that album is
Yeah.
completely different from every other song. So and there's a lot of different moods and changes, and there's like really good rhythms in one song that I like more than other songs, but then this part has much more feeling in it than the other part. So it's hard to pick out like one song to me. And I know what you're saying, but when you go back to like the 70s and the 80s, they had those one hit wonder bands. And and these bands would literally have one song and that was it for their whole career.
Yeah.
And some of these bands would put out 3 or 4 albums of songs, but they still only had that one song that was a hit. And I don't really look to write a song to be a hit or anything like that. I'm more interested in the whole story of the song and like putting together the Dr. Magus story with 4 songs and then continuing other songs like Mesolithic and Paleolithic, things like that. So for me it's really hard to pick out one song. We have a this last video that came out for Yesod the Stellar Light. I mean Yesod the Dark Side of the Moon was really just a visualizer video, which it's more like an advertisement. Just so when a band puts out a video and it's just got the album cover or the name of the song, and it through the whole video, it doesn't do anything. You see a lot of that. Tons of bands put out a video that just says, you know, has the album cover and that's it through the whole video. And instead of having that, we thought it'd be better to at least have a little visualizer video to where they put the album cover in Photoshop and it in After Effects and it kind of moves the album cover artwork around. So we had that done, but we do have a real video coming out, another one besides Cephalogod. We have a new video coming out about mid-May, right before the album comes out, for another song called Hode, the Stellar Light. So
Okay.
that's going to be coming out. And that album, we hired an animation company to do a full, how Apotheosis on Paradox has Dr. Magus in the beginning. I don't know if you're familiar with that video. It's got Dr. Magus putting the thing in the time machine and it shows him going, yeah. So it's going to be like that. The whole video is not going to have us in it. It's going to be a whole video of Dr. Magus in what the song's talking about, going through the tree of life in outer space. So it's going to be pretty cool. There's no AI in it at all. It's all CGI.
Yeah.
So it's I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's AI, but it's not. It's a real, done by a real artist, the whole thing. in a game engine, Unreal game engine. So it's basically the same as what they make video
Mm.
games with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, talking about for the promotion of this new Universal, so what kind of plans do you have for this new album? Perhaps you will embark in tours in Europe, US, who knows, a full Latin American tour. Who knows, what kind of plans do you have for this new album? And obviously the band.
Yeah, the focus was just to get the album out first, and it kind of took a while to record it because of how we recorded it. The studio that we used is in Orlando, and we're in Tampa, so we were able to actually go on the weekends and record just like here and there. Like we'll go this Saturday and Sunday and record, and then maybe 2 weekends later we'll go again and record when he had time open in the studio and it was in town. The guy Jarrett Pritchard who did the album. So the album took, you know, 5 or 6 months to record because we did it that way. We did just a weekend here, a weekend there, pretty much November and December, or actually December and some of January. We didn't do anything because of the holidays and all that. Everybody was gone, and Jarrett, who did the album, he does touring too. He does live sound for a lot of bands. So mainly Tom Warrior. He does all of his projects like Con and the Celtic Frost, and when he does the special Hellhammer shows. So Jarrett's always on the road, doing live sound for bands. And so we kind of worked around his schedule to get the album done. So once the album was finished, then we started saying, okay, we'll put out the album and then we'll start getting offers back in again. And we already have some offers that we're talking about for South America. We have, for most of them are starting to say, well, 2025, we're going to be able to do this because it's kind of late in the year to do anything this year, especially with the festivals. The
Mhm.
festivals always seem to go on during the summers here. Well, here in Europe, especially Europe, they're always during this, they're during, like uh, June, July, August, September, things like that into October. So a lot of the festivals are already booked for this year. So we're looking at doing, some stuff in 2025 for sure. We're definitely going to go to South America again because that's, we have a great following there. So we're definitely going to go there. And we have already talked to a couple different promoters that are interested in bringing us there, and some places. I mean, we've been to Chile, Mexico, and Peru, but we haven't been to like Argentina, Colombia, places like that. So we're going to try to see if we can expand and do some more stuff that we haven't been able to do yet in South America. And then, of course, we'll definitely look at some festivals that we can do in, next summer for Europe.
Mm. Oh, okay,
So we
okay.
will we will be playing live again. It's just we kind of just wanted to really get this album recorded and out.
Mm, okay, nice to know. Nice, interesting to know. So, talking about, and one thing about the live shops, for it's normally when all people say your name, Mike Browning, Nocturnus 80. So a lot of people thinks that you will play songs from the key, from the thresholds. Obviously, that's normal because the people recognize your name in all parts of the world because you create a sound. It's impossible to it's impossible not to know you with the progressive and technical elements since the 90s. So how do you deal with the fans that say, "Hey, could you please play songs from the thresholds, the key, and also you are promoting these new albums? So how do you deal with the aspects to play all songs and now to promote the new album? Because in some ways it's a new band. It's not Nocturnus like the 90s. It's a different band.
Right. Well, the thing is, we never really got to do a proper tour for Paradox either. So
Yeah.
we basically have two full albums that we have not done a tour for at all. And so for us, and we've been just dealing with that this last week. We started coming up with a set list that has songs from the Key, songs from Paradox, and songs from Universal all together. And we're going to try to tie in some of the songs that work together also so they work. And it'll probably be, we'll start out with something like we usually do, something very familiar like Lake of Fire. And then we'll do, we'll kind of chronologically do a song from each album and then a song from each album and then a song from each album. Like if we do 9 songs, it'd be like 3 songs from the key, 3 songs from Paradox, and 3 songs from Unicursal. It kind of gets hard because our songs are kind of long, especially these Unicursal songs. Most of them are 8 minutes or so, 7, 8 minutes long. And when you only have 45 minutes to play, we started writing out a set, and it was just like we had like 9 songs, and it was already like 50 minutes. It's like, oh man, we got to look at what song are we going to cut from this list. So it's kind of hard. And we've never really done any stuff from Thresholds live because I didn't sing on that record. So
Okay.
I didn't do a lot of writing on it either, besides for my drums. Of course, I always write my drum parts, but that's pretty much, I did that, and there was only like 2 songs I helped with the lyrics on Threshold. So I kind of don't, didn't want to do any Threshold stuff because everybody likes hearing the songs from the key, and we went out and played the whole Key album straight through a couple of times for people that wanted to hear that. Like Maryland Death Fest, the first time we played Maryland Death Fest, they said, we want you to play Maryland Death Fest, but we want you to do the Key album. So we did like the whole Key album straight through, and that was before we actually put out Paradox. So we had some new songs, but we didn't do any of them. We just did the Key, the whole thing.
Okay.
So we do, we always throw in some stuff like that. And if we do an encore, we always throw in a Morbid Angel song from when I was in Morbid Angel, like the way it was done on Abominations, like Chapel of Ghouls or something like that. That a lot of people like. We've done Chapel of Ghouls. We've done what else? We did Demon Seed. We did that a couple of times with the Gate and Demon Seed. So it's like we'll pick some of the songs like that, but we only do that. We don't put them in the set. We usually just put it as an encore. If we do an encore, we'll do something like that.
Okay. Okay. Oh, talking about other kind of stuff and now related for especially from one album from your old career. So I remember in an interview that you said that Thresholds was an album that you didn't like it at that time. But 32 years passed since that album came out. And now that album has laid the foundation of progressive death metal for many current bands. So how do you see this sound now with so many bands trying to go back in the time that sound you create?
Yeah, it was weird with Thresholds. I guess I would have liked it a lot more if I had more involvement in it, other than just kind of playing drums and writing a couple lyrics here and there. So the band was kind of literally falling apart at that time anyway. There was fighting going on between, like, Mike and Lou were fighting all the time, Mike Davis and Lou. We were on tour in Europe, and one morning I woke up and I heard a bunch of commotion outside the bus, and those two were on the ground punching each other, fighting. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So to me, Thresholds didn't hold a lot of good memories, if you understand.
Okay. Yeah.
And I understand. And the thing is, when it came out, the Key sold almost 80,000 copies when it came out, which was a lot. And Thresholds, when it came out, it sold about 30,000 copies and then just stopped, selling. So the Key sold like a lot, almost 4 times the amount that Thresholds did. So it kind of, at the time, Thresholds was kind of almost a failure because it only sold a third of what the Key did, and that's not good for a second record.
Yeah.
And when we were on tour, there were people going, "Why aren't you singing anymore?" And they were saying that to me right in front of the vocalist that we have now. We had on Thresholds. They were saying that in front of him. I wish you were singing on this record, and that caused even more, turmoil in the band. So to me, Thresholds it's a great album for what it is, of course, but like I said, it holds a lot of bad memories. That the band was having a lot of problems, and I didn't get to continue anything off of the Key that I wanted to. So it just, it was one of those things that it was what it was at the time, and it is a good album. There's nothing wrong with it, that's for sure. But to me, when I was there when it came out, and I was on it, and I saw that the sales compared to the Key, and it just like it didn't do anything near what the Key did, and the label was all upset about it, and the band ended up getting dropped right after that and never did anything more on Earache.
Mm,
So
well,
that's kind of like the way I feel about Thresholds. So it's kind of like a good and bad thing together.
oh, okay. I understood the bad memories. Okay, okay, I understood very well. So, when talking, as I mentioned for other kind of things also, when technical progressive death metal is mentioned, that's name appears in as many one of the most recognizable band of all times. So, but names like Nocturnus and you, Atheist, were already playing with all these elements since the late 80s, before technical albums from that appeared in the world completely. So, how do you feel that both, so you and Atheist, don't have recognizable names for a lot of people? Even you are working with the technical and progressive elements since the 87, 88. Before they did that.
Well, I think it's a different kind of progressive type of metal, because Thresholds and Atheist were kind of not really death metal albums. They were more along the lines of thrash metal albums, I would say.
Okay.
The Key was more of a death metal record, but Thresholds seemed to be more of a thrash metal record, and Atheist the same way. The songs were more complicated than most of the bands, but the music wasn't super heavy like death metal. So I think now you have a lot of bands that are really heavy death metal, and they're super technical on top of it. So I think that's the difference now, is that the bands now doing real technical death metal are very technical and very heavy. And back then in the 80s and early 90s, when stuff like Thresholds and like Unquestionable Presence from Atheist, when that stuff was coming out, it wasn't death metal really, but it wasn't just
Yeah.
regular metal either. It was in its own kind of category at that time. And now you have like a million different types of categories of even technical metal. You got technical death metal, you got technical thrash metal, you got it's like you got a lot of different styles, genres of metal now. There's thousands of genres of metal now, and back then there was only a few.
Well, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. At the end of the 80s, I think you and Netis. Then that appears in the 90s with new albums, because that's I remember the world at that time. So, well, talking about this overpopulated, as you mentioned it, a lot of bands appears in the world with a lot of styles, a lot of techniques. I don't know. You can see a lot of calisthenic musicians in with the instruments. So how do you see this new era of the metal with calisthenic musicians doing a lot of crazy stuff with the instrument, but then sometimes they forgot to put a feeling into the song.
That's exactly the way I would put it. I think you got that right completely. It's the songs now that people are writing are technically amazing. The But then again, a lot of it's done in Pro Tools, to where that record wouldn't sound like that if you just threw that band in the studio with a reel-to-reel tape machine and taped them and let it come out the way it sounds. Like the Key was done on reel-to-reel, and it was not done in Pro Tools. So now Thresholds was done in Pro Tools. It was brand new at the time, pretty much, but the Key was done on reel-to-reel 24 track, and there's not a lot of fixing of anything on it. But nowadays bands, they put everything in Pro Tools, they quantize it, they run it to a click track, and they make everything perfect. So you have these albums that are just perfect. There's a lot of bands, like they're saying, some of these bands that even speed up their music after they record it.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what they're doing? I don't know, but I know we still don't use click tracks or anything like that to record with. We record guitar and drums, and then everything is layered, but I don't use a click track. We just play the songs. Even though we have keyboards, they get layered on way later. You know, after everything just starts with guitars and drums in the studio with us. We just do it like that. The two guitars and me play the songs, and then they take those tracks back out and redo the guitar tracks to make them a better sounding, you know, and perfect. I guess you'd say they kind of perfect them a little bit
Yeah.
better. And then we start layering everything else on: keyboards, bass, vocals, things like that. So I think there's a big difference because so many bands use Pro Tools, and they quantize everything, and everything's run to a click track, and they'll sit there and make every beat exactly the same sounding. So you don't have like a variance in even parts. Like a part of a song, like the whole song will be at one level. You don't have this like things speeding up or slowing down a little bit to get more intense. You don't have, you know, the rhythms do, but as far as the recording itself, every part that's played is timing perfect. It sounds like a machine.
Yeah.
And I think that's what takes the feeling out of the song. Because in the 70s and 80s, especially the 70s, all these bands like look at Rush. They never used stuff like that back then. And even say Zeppelin, you can't put a click track to Zeppelin because it doesn't work. His timing is not perfect, but when you listen to the song, it sounds fantastic. So I think there's a big difference between letting a band just play and then forcing a band into a time code.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Interesting point, but you got, yeah, I remember also the 70s. Well, I'm from the 80s. I remember the music is more natural, more organic at that time until the 90s. The 90s is either the same. The 90s, the death metal began strongly, and the more bands are doing the more organic. Now, a lot of people plays like a machine, so I don't know. I don't understand very well some sounds for now. So, and advancing one of the last questions for this interview, a detail that is a bit of trend today on social media, especially, is when an original member of the band supports a band when they're usually used to play on a tour or just for a moment. The fans go crazy in social media. Then the same thing happened recently with Down Lil Killer, who was supporting Andrex during some concerts or tours in Latin America. So, would you accept a tour with Morbid Angel as a support drummer, or celebrate the beginnings of the band, or what would have to happen for this situation? If perhaps Trey proposed you, hey, I will. Do you agree to do some celebrating process of the Morbid first demos?
You know, I probably would if Trey wanted to. I always enjoyed playing the songs in Morbid Angel with Trey because he's a very original guitar player. So I still talk to him too. Occasionally we talk all, you know, still, and I always thought it'd be kind of cool to go out and do you know, like the Abominations album, just me and him, and you know, have a bass player and another guitar player in there, but do the whole album, Abominations, and it is an album. I'm not sure why people think that Abominations of Desolation is a demo, because it's a full eight or nine song album.
Yes.
So people don't record 9-song demos too often. And
Yeah, well, at
we
that
got,
time, yeah.
you know, the thing is, we got signed to a label called Goric Records, which was owned by David Vincent. So we
Mm.
had a record deal. We went from Tampa to North Carolina to record an album, and we recorded an album. Now, the fact that it didn't come out after it was recorded was from different situations, not from, you know, the fact that it was a demo, because it's still an album. And even when Earache released it later on, you know, they released Abominations. It says right up in the corner, this album was recorded in 1986, and it says album. So I know some people, Trey even calls it a demo, and I'm not sure why he wants to call Abominations of Desolation a demo, because it's definitely not a demo. We
No.
had a record contract, a signed record contract, and we went and recorded an album. The fact that it didn't get released at the time doesn't turn it into a demo. It's still an album.
Well, yeah.
So to me, I think it would be cool to get him and me together and do like just not a tour maybe, but even a really big festival show. And I can sing and play drums on it, just like I did on Abominations, and he can play guitar, and we can get a second guitar player and a bass player up there and redo the whole thing. And I think it would be phenomenal. I think people would really like what they hear.
Yeah.
And I don't want to replace anybody in Morbid Angel. Trey has Morbid Angel now, and it's a completely different thing than when I was in it. But I
Yes.
think, like you said, for nostalgia, just for the fans and things like that, it would be a really cool thing to see that happen.
Yes, for a commemoration for the first album from the Morbid Angel, Abomination of Desolation, because as you mentioned it, that album has more, that album will accomplish 40 years in 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny to think that, but but yeah, I would definitely, I'd be interested in doing that. Not a whole tour, but some really big, maybe 2 or 3 really big shows around the world. Like at a big festival, we just do this one set and do the whole album. And
Yeah.
I think it would really like. I think people would really enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people will enjoy that if that's some in some way, oh, in some day happen that the people love the reunion. So we are very close to this interview. And one of the last interview, Mike, is as you can see, the words, the music industry, the mystery into the music industry, lost, especially for the bands because as I remember when a band talked about the Satanism in the 80s or 90s, or especially when Iron Maiden appears with some number of this song, say that this song is just to piss off someone. And at that time, he did that. Twisted Sister the same, the Satanism either way. I remember one anecdote about the Brujeria because Brujeria, the band say that there are narcosatánicos. That's for me I believe that perhaps they was some narco satanicos, so narco satanic people. So you believe, but now that mystery is off. Nobody, no, there's no mysteries in the bands. The trends around the world, how to be a black metal, how to do a black metal, how to cover Spain. There are movies a lot metal, etc., etc. Now the metals will more accepted with a lot of things. So in some things, some musicians think that the aspect of rebellion that the metal has since the 60s to now are loose for these social trends or new people but and okay for this. And so what's your point of view about this essence in some way loose for the new technology, for the internet, for the globalization? Because the metal is not like rebellion now, it's more like trends for some ways. If you are satanist now, there are thousands of people will follow you creating a church with Satanism aspects in some part of the world.
Yeah, that is a weird situation of how it's changed over the years. I think in the beginning, I think you had a lot of people that were kind of seriously into it, but then you had a lot of people that weren't and were just using it as something to get the popularity and get the rebellion out of it. So it would be like you said, Brujeria. Some of those guys definitely weren't. You know, it, it was what they were doing was for the songs. They weren't really into it. A lot of these bands that sing a lot of things, they're not really into what they sing about. And I think once that started happening a lot, and people started realizing that a lot of these bands were not really into what they were saying they were into, and you really only had a handful that were when it came down to it.
Okay.
There was really only a handful of bands that was really into the things that they sang about, and a lot of them said they were, but they weren't. And I think that kind of ruined it, uh, to where now people don't really even look at it as serious anymore at all. And that to me kind of is what happened with the whole thing. You had some really serious bands, but the majority of them weren't. And I think that's what happened is people would, and then the bands, once they realized, oh, I don't have to do this to be rebellious anymore, then they changed what they do. So a lot of people lost that edginess that the bands had because the bands weren't doing what they were doing before. You know, you don't see anybody going out there and burning churches down anymore, things like that. You know. Oh, sorry, I lost that somehow. Let me get back here. The phone tilted. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. So yeah, you don't really see the crazy stuff that was going on with like Mayhem and things like that back in the day. It's not happening anymore. So, and people's attention spans now is terrible.
Yes.
I see shows where there'll literally be a whole crowd of people come to see one band, and if that band's playing earlier, as soon as they're done, all those people just leave. And you just don't have the support that you did. The today's people, their attention span is like this, you know.
Yes.
It's like they have the favorite band of the week now. It's not like this is my favorite band of all time anymore. So I think with the small attention span that people now have for things, is they'll start to watch a movie or listen to a record, and if one little thing doesn't go right in their sense of listening to it or watching a movie, they'll turn it off. It's done. So, and like you said before, you know, a lot of people now, they just want one song from a band.
Yeah.
They don't really care about a whole album anymore. And you know, a lot of bands did write one or two really good songs, and the rest of the album was what they call throwaway material. So I don't want to have an album that has a bunch of throwaway material on it. I try to, that's why it might take us longer to write an album, but I try to think that all of our songs are worth something, and not just one or two are going to be the hits and the rest are just throwaway songs.
Well, okay. Thanks for this answer, Mike. Well, Mike, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one like me. As I mentioned earlier, you were one of my favorites since the 90s. Love your first two records with Nocturnus. Love these new records, Paradox and Universal. I did my pre-order for this Universal. I hope I arrives soon my CD because love this new album. Congratulations on this new one. As usually, great one. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Methalarium followers?
Well, like we talked about earlier, we haven't been to South America in a while now. And I definitely want to get back there. To me, I've been a lot of places all over the world, and South America has the craziest crowds. You know, it's just when we go down there, it's like wow, you feel like, you know, there's just people everywhere that are into metal there, and it seems like a lot of people like metal in Latin America. South America, all of, you know, you guys have a huge following of metal down there, and it still seems to be more underground instead of like you know, like new metal and stuff like that, like you have in America and Europe. A lot of the newer bands have big crowds, but it seems in South America that a lot of the older bands still have the big crowds. Like people still really like underground music there, and underground music in the US is not nearly as popular as it is in South America. So to me, I really like being able to go down there and play because the fans, the people that listen to that music are so into it, and they really they stick with it. It's not like this is the band of the day and I'll like a different band next week like you have here. So I think for me, you guys have the best crowds, and I always look forward to being able to go down there and play because of that kind of situation. It's like everybody's more like a brotherhood of music than just a bunch of people just going to a show because they want to look cool being seen at the show, things like that.